Let's talk about the global world exclusive of Vladimir Putin here on India Today. What a moment for Indian journalism. Our exclusive interview with Russian President Putin hasn't just made headlines here at home, and it has, by the way, it's also exploded across the world. Top global outlets are quoting India Today on everything from Putin's equation with Prime Minister Modi, the Ukraine conflict, oil diplomacy, and of course what he had to say about Donald Trump. This shows you that India Today is ensured, the network is ensured that Indian media also reaches the stage where we're talked about globally, that these international exclusives aren't just confined to a few publications, but also is accessed by Indian networks, by Indian media. Those are some of the headlines there for you. On your screen, CNN World, referring to the India Today article, particularly about the Ukraine conflict. Then you have this headline in The Independent, all of them quoting the article, in their article, the India Today interview. Now, The Independent too, writing about what Putin said on the Ukraine war. So these are just a few excerpts, and I'll continue to get you those. But what exactly have CBC, Independent, CNN referred to as far as the Ukraine war goes? Listen in to exactly what the Russian president said in the world exclusive interview to India Today.
What is the end game for Vladimir Putin in Ukraine?
Так я же сказал.
Well, I've just said it.
Мы признали вот эти...
We have recognized, listen,
Мы 8 лет не
for
признавали
8 years we did not recognize
самопровозглашенных
the self-declared republics. For 8 years,
провозгласили
they
независимость.
have declared the
А мы
independence.
старались наладить
And we were
отношения
trying
с остальной частью
to build
Украины.
relations between the rest of Ukraine
Потом,
and
когда
these
поняли, что
republics.
это невозможно,
When
что
we
их просто уничтожают,
understood that it's
вынуждены
impossible, that they're simply
признать
being destroyed, we were forced to recognize them, and not simply
в части
recognize them
в
as
рамках
their partial territory,
административных
but within
границ,
administrative
когда они
borders
существовали еще в
when they
советское
existed
время,
back in the Soviet times.
а потом во времена независимой
And later,
Украины,
during the times of the
после
independent Ukraine,
обретения
after
независимости,
it gained
в рамках
independence,
административных границ.
in the
И мы сразу Украине
administrative
сказали,
limits,
украинским войскам, люди не
lines.
хотят с вами жить. Они вышли на референдум, проголосовали
So
за
the
независимость.
people, the voters,
Выведите свои
came to
войска.
the referendum
И
and
никаких
voted
военных
for
действий.
everyone to withdraw troops
Нет,
from there and not to conduct
предпочитали
any armed
воевать. Ну, вот чем
actions there.
воевались.
But they preferred to
В принципе,
wage war. And now
всё к
it
этому
all came to a head. And it all comes to one thing.
вооруженным путем освободить
Either we do that
эти территории,
through
либо украинские
military
войска
action will liberate the territories, or the Ukrainian troops will
эти территории
withdraw
прекратят
and leave these territories and stop killing people there.
So I understand why you're seeing these kind of headlines really about what the Russian president said. He very rarely sits down for this kind of a conversation, and a freewheeling one at that, speaking about so many issues. And that's something also that many of these international publications, channels have spoken of, about how Putin was so comfortable, spoke completely at ease, addressed every single issue, spoke on every global controversy, even speaking about Donald Trump, speaking about himself, speaking about the oil sanctions and whatnot. I want to bring in right now Gita Mohan, who was in Moscow, who of course did that groundbreaking interview with the Russian president. Gita, first of all, congratulations. Welcome back home. Overwhelmed, I'm sure, by the response that the interview has received. You've been tracking all of the international publications. What do they really have to say about this interview, Gita?
Well, again, the focus is for the West has always been for a few very key issues. The top of their agenda was what's happening with the Russia-Ukraine war. And I say this, Akshita, is because the day when we had to interview the Russian president was when a historic meeting was taking place just a few rooms away at the Kremlin, which was a meeting between Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and President Putin. So the focus was for Western media and will remain the Russia-Ukraine war. And if you see and you go through all the networks, they have been talking about what he said very clearly on the conversation with Jared Kushner. This is the first time that Kushner was in Moscow, historic meeting with President Putin, but also on the Russia-Ukraine war, focusing on a few things, and that has to do with the fact that he has very clearly said that the Donbass region is a non-negotiable. In many words than one, it's a non-negotiable. The territories that are now under Russian control are not going to go back to Ukraine, and that certainly has been a headline in many a publication. But Akshita, also very interesting conversation that I heard on CNN was that there is a lot to unpack from this interview, and one of the reporters there said, yes, and we have a lot to learn from the India Today interview. Why? Because
Wow.
I don't think President Putin has ever spoken so candidly with any Western media. There's always an explanation, even with Tucker Carlson and his interview, when the focus remained Russia and Ukraine. And he actually went on to say, well, I don't think you know the history. And the first question lasted more than 30 minutes because he was explaining and giving a backgrounder on the war itself and the history of Ukraine and Russia so that it is put into context. With us, that was not the case. And that's why the answers were so direct on what Donbass is going to be. That if that requires military might, Russia is willing to use it. A message very clear to Europe and to America that they'll have to continue investing arms into Ukraine should they think that this red line can be crossed. So that is a part of the headline. And the other very important one was oil and the American hypocrisy, because a lot of them woke up to the fact that America still continues to, after sanctioning the entire leadership, still continues to buy nuclear fuel from Russia and is asking India to stop buying oil.
You know, interestingly, and I think one bit that's gone completely viral is when you actually asked Putin about the meeting with Witkoff, and he says, 5 hours, it went on, you don't want to hear about it. That part, of course, has got everyone talking about what he really thought. But, you know, that itself tells you the sense of comfort that he felt. What really was it, Gita? You were there, so you can tell us perhaps better than anyone else. What really made Putin get comfortable, decide that, you know, I'm going to take every issue head on? I know we had a slotted 60 minutes, it went on for 100 minutes, and he's done interviews before. It's not like he hasn't, but this one is very, very unique. He's never really spoken out in this manner or been so at ease, so sure of himself.
Well, he was actually quite comfortable. We started with the fact, you know, Akshita, let's just put it how it is. He was going to come to India, and India is a friend. So when we started the interview, we had to focus on his India visit. We are, after all, a publication from India, so the visit was very important to us. But we did not confine ourselves to India. This is one of those interviews where where everything that now concerns Russia was discussed, was put in front of him, and he took all those questions in the right spirit. In fact, showed some of his sense of humor too, where when I asked him about the Witkoff meeting, and I said, I wish I was, being a foreign affairs journalist and editor of this network, I said, I wish I were a fly on the wall just to know what happened. He said, oh, you wouldn't have wanted to be. You would have been bored if you were in the room. And he laughed and said, I was bored. So that's how
Yeah.
funny, that's how funny he was in terms of how comfortable he was. So because we started with the India visit, there was a lot of comfort in what he wanted to talk and discuss. And therefore, after which we saw that he was comfortable taking every question. We were not there to browbeat. We were not there to corner him. We were there to ask him the right and the tough questions as well when it comes to Russia-Ukraine war. I asked him about eastern Ukraine and the Russian-speaking people who felt quite heartbroken when they were attacked by Putin, because their families in Russia, in fact, if anything, they weren't very happy with Kiev, with Zelensky, because he had banned Russian language. The administration in Kiev has not been has not been as kind to eastern Ukraine as it has to its own parts or the other parts of Ukraine, and
Yeah.
so they were surprised. To which he responded. He had to respond to every question. He did not wiggle out of any of the questions
Correct.
that we put forth. So yes, very comfortable interview, and if you see, very relaxed, showed his sense of humor, But also, these are very difficult times. And in these difficult times, when every country is being bullied by every other country, you try to look for, not me, meaning countries try to look for allies. And over here, I suppose he was coming to an ally nation.
Yeah, yeah. He was very candid. That was very clear. He was very candid. He was comfortable answering those questions. But I think it was important what you highlighted also, Gita, that look, this wasn't us or journalists trying to, corner a world leader. This was an interview. There was no attempt to sensationalize whatsoever. And that was evident really in the interview also, that this was a conversation where questions were being asked, straightforward questions on issues plaguing not just Russia and India, but across the world. And it was that honesty, perhaps, that led to Putin also reciprocating in the same manner. But Gita, you mentioned that it was because of the conversation starting off about the India-Russia dosti that really got Putin in his element and comfortable, perhaps. So let's play out an excerpt of that also for our viewers.
The Prime Ministers of India have had a huge role to play in this strengthening of India-Russia ties. Who do you think, in your span of being a leader here in Russia, really made that difference since you were in power in enhancing India-Russia ties? Which are the Prime Ministers?
Well, you have already asked me to characterize other leaders of other countries. I do not think it is very polite. You know, now we're working with Prime Minister of India, His Excellency Narendra Modi. Indeed, we have very trustworthy and friendly relations. He is a very reliable person. In that sense, I'm speaking very sincerely. India got lucky. He lives India. I'm talking to him and I know him. I hope he won't be cross with me. I'm just saying what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking. It is very pleasant to me to talk to such a person of integrity, you know. And that's number one. Number two, indeed, he is very sincere when it goes about strengthening India-Russian ties across the whole range of areas, especially crucial issues of economy and defense and humanitarian cooperation, development of high-tech. It is very interesting to meet with him. He traveled here, and we sat with him at my residence, and we drank tea for the whole evening, and we discussed different topics. We simply had an interesting conversation, purely like humans.